Jagat Bahudha Karanat Parashakti Ananta Guna Paramaha. In order to understand why we have to follow Chathurmasya, first of all we need to understand that every species is important. There are millions of species of life that we are surrounded with. Each of them are important. There is not one species of life which is unnecessary or redundant. No. We may think like that. We may feel that a certain fruit here, a certain plant here is just redundant. But that's because of our limited intellect. First of all, we need to open our eyes and we need to come out of our myopic vision. Then we can begin to understand why our ancients followed Chathurmasya. Why there is the Vidhi of Chathurmasya. Why to follow Chathurmasya cannot be understood in the current paradigm. Because the current paradigm is destructive not just to nature, but it is destructive to oneself. It is foolishness to call this as advancement. We cannot call something as advancement which threatens the very sustenance of life that surrounds us. We are driving more than 100 species of life on a daily basis to extinction. So this is the kind of life that we are living. In what angle, in what way can we call it as advancement? It's crazy. Basically, the way we live needs to not only sustain us, but sustain all the various species of life. All the various species of life together, all of us are the praja of God. Yo na pita janita yo vidhata bhama aniveda bhuvanani. So God is our pita. He says, Sarva yonishu kaunteya murtayah sambhavantiyaha tasam brahma mahadyonihi aham bija pradah pita. God says that for all species of life, Sarva yonishu kaunteya murtayah sambhavantiyaha tasam Lakshmi Brahma Mahayonihi Yonihi Aham Bija Pradah Pita. Lakshmi is the mother and I am the father, God says. We have to come to this understanding first. Then we will understand why to follow Chathurmasya. Okay, the first month is Shaka Vrata, right? So we all understand Chathurmasya to be pertaining to certain restrictions on food and mobility. Why is mobility restricted in Chathurmasya? Why do we follow the restriction of not eating any plant produce during Chathurmasya? Shaka Vrata, the first month. Every month has different restrictions. The first month is Shaka. Why is Shaka? Why do we not eat plant produce? There is a certain logic. So for that we need to understand, as human beings, our function is to orchestrate in such a way that we play along with the system that God has put in place that sustains life. So human beings' role is this. We need to understand when to do what. What happens during this time? We have to observe nature. What happens is, after the summer, everything gets dried up. And then with whatever reserves are left in the roots of perennial plants, again when there is rain, then again it begins to blossom. It begins to shoot up and then it begins to grow. So this is the time of growth. This first month is the time of growth. So we need to orchestrate as human beings in such a way that we facilitate that growth and we allow it to stabilize. You see, what would happen if, say, even if something is growing, say you have grown some paddy or something, and then you just keep cutting. You need to allow it time to stabilize. So all these greenery, this is the time when it grows, with the reserves that are left in the roots, or there has been seeds that have been distributed during the seasons before. These seeds also have reserves. So from those reserves, with this rain, there is growth. And we need to facilitate that growth. How do we facilitate? By not interrupting. You see, ನಮ್ಮ ದೇವರಿಗೆ ನಾವು ತುಂಬ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡೋದು ಬೇಡ. ನಾವು ಏನು ಮಾಡಬಾರ್ದು ಅಂತ ದೇವರು ಹೇಳಿದನ್ನು ನೋಡಿ, ಅದನ್ನು ಮಾಡದೇ ಇದ್ರೂ ದೇವರಿಗೆ ಸಂತೋಷ. ಏನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ, ಪ್ರವೃತ್ತಿಂಚ ನಿವೃತ್ತಿಂಚ, ಎರಡು ಮುಖ್ಯ. ಟು ಡೂ ವಾಟ್ ಇಸ್ ನೆಸೆಸರಿ and to resist from what is not supposed to be done are both important in invoking the pleasure of God. God provides for abundance. We have understood this from the previous video, and this abundance is what sustains life. So our activities and our movements, our way of life in this world should be in such a way as to support that abundance. So we have to not interrupt with the growth of the green. in this growing season. So this is the whole idea of not eating shaka. You see, this green is what is sustaining life. First, we need to come to terms with that. It's not the software industry, not something you can produce, not something that is produced from the human brain. It's not something, it's not some software, it's not even any of the services or goods that the modern economy produces, the modern human civilization produces, is not what sustains life. First, we need to actually understand that. You see, then we'll begin to understand why we are doing this. Photosynthesis that happens in these leaves, that is what sustains life. The sunlight is used, the leaf produces food, and then the food is circulated up and down. Then by the process of exudation, the food is delivered to all the various living beings that are there in the soil. There are millions of species of living beings in the soil, the various kinds of bacteria, fungi, even mosquitoes have their work just above the soil where there is the foliage of leaf. Then there is the millipede, the centipede, the scorpion. There are millions of species, the earthworm, that are important for the soil, that enrich the soil. So the photosynthesis provides food for them too. By the process of exudation, the food goes to the roots and from there to these living beings. So it is they that enrich the soil, and this is the time when they multiply, when their numbers increase, and they are the only means by which we can enrich our soil. There is no other way, mind you, to enrich the soil. A civilization which does not recognize the importance of maintaining its soil shall perish no matter what technology we have, that we have blind faith that it will protect us, no matter what. We are going to perish if we don't respect the soil, because our sustenance is that. So these living beings in the soil are enriched by the photosynthesis, and this is the season that they multiply. You might have noticed that you walk around during this time, you will get one of these various kinds of peeds under your feet, and then you just end up stepping on them and you say, oh yeah, I just stepped on them. So this is the time when they are fluttering around, multiplying, they are increasing in their numbers. So we have to facilitate that. So our mobility is restricted, so much so that even for brushing our teeth, the twigs that we use, we collect that also. So the first month is based on restricting our food habits in such a way that we don't eat plant produce. Cows are also not to be grazed during this time, because we are supposed to give the plants the time to grow. So this is the idea behind the first month of Chathurmasya. It's a time of growth, and we let the growth to come to a point that it stabilizes, and then we start taking the produce. So there's an idea behind this. There is playing along with the system that God has put in place, and God smiles, because the only way in which we can be happy, and not just that, not just being happy, but we can sustain ourselves only if we play along with this system that God has put in place. And there's no other way, there's no other way, there's no other way. No matter what advancement human being achieves, or no matter how much he is deluded as being the apex of so-called human evolution. Human evolution, the evolution of the human intellect would be measured by how much we can recognize the system that God has put in place, Janmadhyasya Yataha, and play along and understand our function individually and collectively. Human beings have a collective function in supporting this. So let's wake up, let's come to our senses, and let's understand that sustenance is based on playing along with the system that God has put in place. Evam pravartitam chakram nanu vartayatiha yaha aghayurindriya ramaha mogham partha sa jivati. Krishna says, anyone who does not play along, anyone who does not contribute in taking this life, in taking this cycle of sustenance forward, anyone who does not understand what they need to do regarding this, they live a life that is wasted, they live a life that is sinful, and they are destructive to themselves and the world around. So let's not be that lot. Let's wake up, and this Chathurmasya is an expression of that sense that we have inside, of being part of this creation, and of being aware of what our individual and collective responsibilities are. Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. Narayana.